In 2014, although I, for one, am not given to writing fiction, Mr. Weems and I, on a sort of wager between us, elected to create and put out a small volume in time for Halloween with Uncanny Tales, one each, for the season. We managed to get that done. Jerv's contribution ended up as a chapter in Evensong. Mine continues to stand alone, and got it published just in time for Halloween. The Halloween of 2014 was, in fact, the day on which I had a fairly major heart attack, which resulted in my having a triple bypass on November 7th. Consequently, I don't know that I look with a great deal of pleasure upon the story. But it's not, I think, too bad a one. The conceit in the volume was that Mr. Weems and I were telling each other the tale. And so, what you are about to hear begins with my introduction of my offered tale, and then with the tale itself, which, for those of you with the appropriate educational background, will probably be caught on to fairly easily. It is entitled The Destruction of Sennacherib. We begin. Well, now, as I say, things are mighty different with us. North of the Rappahannock and the Eastern Shore, well, Mennonite Germans and old Dutchmen, and the last fading 8 lines of the old Swedish colony. And then those damn Puritans and their canting, psalm-singing, transcendentalist grandsons, and finally nowadays secular do-gooders, just as narrow and Puritan and intolerant as they ever were, hot gospeling on behalf of newer nostrums that are more Mark's than Luke, John, or Matthew. But Southards, they say, I'm a carol several times over myself, they say that when Father Andrew White, the Jesuit chaplain aboard Ark, with the Culberts, arrived in the New World in Maryland, he said a prayer for the intercession of the angels of the Americans. For wilderness, I know there must be angels there. Well, now, in Tidewater, and then in the Low Country, the folks came there first from the Old World, where English mostly, and their legends and their casts of thought and mind were that too, and they saw what they were equipped to see, all the baggage they didn't know they'd carried over. And in Tidewater and the Low Country, soon enough, there was another parcel of folks were brought over, our original sin as a nation, slavery. And they brought their own myths and their own gods, from the Sea Islands to the Chesapeake and the Eastern Shore. Igbo Odinani, Yoruba religion, Akan religion. And every so often, an old Native American erratic would intrude through these sediments and layers that were being put down. In the upcountry, the back country, of course, from the Blue Ridge westwards, it was all Ulster west. And then, as time and the frontier marched on, you got the French and the Spanish, and more Germans, Scandinavians and Balts and all, and Poles and Czechs, and then folk pushing up from old Mexico, and whole new different aberrant cultures, plains tribes and all manner of tribes. And I wouldn't be surprised if down around Lafayette and Abbeville, and La Casina Grand Chenier and Lachar, Tijon and Boudreaux have a few Luc Garlou stories they brought from Acadie, when they, by the evening fire, repeat Evangeline's story Yes, I thought that'd make you set up on your haunches, though the Cajun rougarou is different, which is right much to the point. But when you get west of, well, old 100th, shall we say, anything can happen. Anything. Now I know as well as you, son, everything half implied or connoted by werewolves and wargs. Yes, including the sexual and usually the homosexual overtones of the common currency of literary criticism and anthropology. And I stand with your duke and your clergyman. I don't assume the existence of spiritual evil except as a last resort, but I do believe it exists. But, and to know you're fixing to be itching to make a smart-ass remark about John Addington Symonds. What I'm big to tell you really is, in a different sense, a problem in modern ethics. It's not, I insist it is not, a matter of the so-called paranormal. I'd sooner it were, frankly, but you can make your own judgment about that. It rises west of the 100th meridian, and don't you forget it, because that is where anything might happen. The destruction of Sennacherib. Now, I said it and I meant it. Anything can happen west of 100th. Hell, west of 90 if you mean the highway with that number. But beyond 100 west, well, quote, classic literature, you're over the edge of the wild. Anything can happen. Anything. The frontier just about ground to a halt there for a right spot of time. Partly because it was in the broad middle of the Comancheria, and the warriors who had kicked the tough conquistadors back to the Rio Grande Valley and laid their towns and missions north of it either to waste or under tribute were right stiff opponents even for the Ulster Americans, the Scotch-Irish. But partly, too, because it's just about where the rain stops. A lot of farmers were lured west of Old 100th, and they found that they could sing every doxology in the Psalter and the Prayer Book, and God Almighty himself wasn't going to make the rain flow like the blessings they were praising him for. Lots of farmers went bust, or back east, or under, or into their graves, believing the damn fool notion that rain follows the plow. Not in, by God, Texas, it doesn't. The dawns, ain't there, are purple as the triumphing imperator's robe. The sunsets are golden, the refiner's fire. But, Jesus Christ and General Jackson, that bone-bleached midday sky, the oven heat in summer, and the mortuary cold of bone-snapping winter, a blue norther coming down like a wolf on the fold. Stop by Texas, west of 100th. My people in Texas are scattered through the piney woods of East Texas. Deep East Texas has always been 20 miles further in from where we happen to be. And on the Gulf Coast, flat as God's billiards table. It's a green, wet country. Pine and hardwoods and down to the coast and the Gulf. Broad southern rivers like old ancestral tidewater memories. Upcountry around Rusk and Henderson. It's hilly, the sort of landscape our Piedmontized second sons who'd left Tidewater long ago, as we were, lit up to see when we fetched up there. Cotton country. The ragged ham of old Dixie, and God knows we clung to her skirts as long as we could. West of 100th, though, good luck finding ham and eggs. It's all beef ain't that. Before irrigation, there was hardly a crop to be had. Men had to ranch or die. It's deserted even now. It was never desert in the common sense, and yet it was, too. They called the plains from Canada to the Mexican border the Great American Desert for a good long time. And, well, you can see that. People coming through on Butterfield's stage, they shut their eyes and shut it. Psychologically, it was desert to them. Same way as crinoline ladies in the Georgian period and into the sort of Victorian times shut their eyes and hid their faces when they crossed the Alps, because psychologically that was wild and hostile wilderness to them. it's hot. The sun beats down from a brass sky, and then a norther blows through, or a dust storm so cobrough that canned goods, unopened, get gritty. No, I'm not kidding. Psychologically, it is the desert. And as you'd expect of the sort of people who adapt and thrive in a desert, the folks out there, well, God, west of 100th, is the old desert god of our first monotheism. Like the sun, he is glaring down with merciless gaze. Outside the few towns and cities, he's not Athanasius' God or Eusebius's. He's surely not Dunn's or Herbert's or John Wesley's. He is Isaiah's Yahweh. He's right now to be an Allah in the minds of the folks out there west 100th. Of course, right smart of those folk we're primed by Calvin and Knox and Campbell to see them that way anyhow. The Mexican Americans aren't, of course. And there are a few old Germans and Czechs and Poles on the fringes of the big country west of 100th, whose God is Luther's or Huss's, or the God of St. Cyril and Methodius and good King Wenceslas. But a lot of that country is pretty much the westernmost magistrate's district of Rockbridge County, Virginia, in a matter of speaking. Well, hell, why not? Sam Houston and Bigfoot Wallace were both born in Rockbridge, and both as Ulster as an Orange Order march. So folks out there west of 100th get a mite other-minded, grim and Old Testament-like, all your tribes of Israel, and with that Calvinist sense of predestination of being the elect of God. No wonder if sometimes they strike for the Lord and forget Him, utterly sure of their own righteousness, the certainty that they are the chosen of that God who directed that the heathen be slaughtered and the groves of Baal and all the idols be struck down. Yeah, it's a white whiskey culture out there, all those Ulster Americans, but by God they do trample eat the grapes of wrath when Jehovah directs them. There's a vein of superstition in them. Well, hell, there's that in everyone. Strange lights flicker on certain saints' days for the Hispanics, and every last one has an uncle, great uncle nowadays, I expect, who has seen a bulto. The Germans are still right German, very, very Catholic, or extremely and strictly Lutheran. We hold folk beliefs poking through once in a while. And, well, if there's any pastor of folks likely to have a last lingering memory of their old gods and heroes and fair folk than the Scots and the Irish have, it's the Scotch-Irish. Yet at the same time, with old Jehovah glaring down at them from that hot bleached sky, they are the most hard-headed folks, flat pig-headed it comes to less than natural explanations. I ain't gonna believe it unless I sees it, and all right, I done seed it, and I still don't goddamn believe it. All of them. Trevino's, Allhorns, McClung's, every last one of them. It doesn't matter, though. Anything can happen west of old 100th. Well, now, that's not my people's Texas, west of 100th. But such towns as there are tend to be few and far between, and right smart of them on the border of the big empty out there. And it's in the towns you find such civilization as there is. Churches beyond the hard shell and hard scrabble little sects no one ever heard of, say. Even the Baptists, let alone the Methodists, and the few high-cotton Episcopalian churches tend to be in the towns, and hospitals and such, and banks. Before he went to be an oil company landman in East Texas, signing up farmers and planters for their mineral rights, it's how he met and courted and married my grandmother, and then an oil company executive. My grandfather was a banker in Belton. The 100th is 2.5 degrees west of there, and Belton, like other towns on the edge, used to do some of the banking for folks far out in the big empty. Well, somehow or another, we ended up with some land out beyond 100th. Never went there, sold off the surface rights, It kept some of the oil and gas rights, mineral rights, and some hunting leases. That's stalking and shooting the way y'all put it in the UK. Never wear any foxes, ain't there, to speak of any hounds to ride you after the varmints. The wolves, there was a bounty on them. A pair of ears to get a country boy $1 maybe at a good year. We're eradicated early, and the coyotes and the coy dogs have that niche now, with maybe a gray fox wandering that way once in a blue moon from some place he's holed up in the cross timbers. I suggest you remember that fact. It's important. 8th L West 100th, though, past the Balcones escarpment breaks. I don't go out there much, never did, haven't for years. But I keep an ear and an eye. As I told you, this is a purely natural problem in ethics, and law for that matter. There are stretches of country out there that, well, it's another world. Everybody's dog knows that, and anything can happen west of 100th. The part I'm talking about, it's rough and rumpled country, nothing dramatic, but a man can get himself lost, norteño, in it right easily. Grassland mostly, and always was. It's just beef masters and Charolais and Herefords now rather than bison. There are a few outcrops of woods and more scrub. It's a dissected plateau with 1 or 2 ribbons of road and highway across it and 1 or 2 more streams and small rivers. No, I'm not giving you a clearer terror than that. You'll see why soon enough. It's a tough country and tough people hold it. County seats have a rough and tumble politics in them. Those are the places a DA, if he goes bad, or a crooked sheriff or county judge, can make hell on earth for a good long while, until somebody gets Austin's attention and the Rangers come in and bust the place up and sort it out. It takes a while usually, but that's because folks out there don't talk much to strangers. They just soon settle things themselves when they can. Feuds a century and a half dead and gone can break out again, and people start side-eyeing each other in church and taking their sidearms to dinners on the grounds of the weekly trip to the General Mercantile. They don't believe in complaining. Action, yes, but not complaining. And so, hell yes, there's times it's bold action rather than complaining. They aren't precisely inclined to wait for the glance of the Lord to smite without the sword the might of the Gentile, West 100th. You get something out there they can't explain. They're not liable to talk about it, at least to old outsiders, which means the people the next town over. Forget some smart-ass TV news crews from Fort Worth or San Angelo, let alone the big cities. They're right likely to settle it on their lonesomes, which is where the ethical and maybe legal problem comes in. Anything can happen once you're west of 100th. You know me well enough to know I'm inclined to be skeptical. Having been a lawyer and being a historian will do that to a man. I hear people going on about, say, Bigfoot and hell, this ain't Uganda. You expect me to believe in a large non-human primate in North America. Been here since the last closure of the Barren Land Bridge. Well, maybe you'd best have a hide and a DNA analysis and a right sturdy explanation why it's absent and any antecessors are absent from the fossil record of the most excavated happy paleontological hunting ground of all Earth's continents. Yes, me, all that sort of business is imagination operating on idleness and boredom. And I tend to take note when it's always just the sort of myth you'd expect from the people who tell it. Right now, every time, you can track what they say they saw back to their ancestral Connemara or Murray or Gévaudan or Saxony or Extremadura. Hereditary legends. Old granny's stories by the fire of an evening. It was General Sam said Americans ought to stop dwelling on European castles and their crazy knights and lady loves, and remember instead The unwritten legends of heroism and adventure, which the old men would tell them, who are now smoking their pipes around the roof trees of Kentucky and Tennessee. Same token, I damn well don't believe in shapeshifters or wildebeests. And as for hybrids of humans and other mammals, what in the name of Crick and Watson and the sainted Rosalind are these people smoking? Tell whatever it is, Willie will want some. As far as I'm concerned, a man who believes in paranormal explanations outside the realm of theology ought to be digging ditches, not writing books going on the TV as a self-designated expert. And I'm right skeptical of eyewitness testimony, having been a lawyer and being a historian. Good God Almighty, man will tell you the truth in my experience right up until you put him on oath. Because that's when he starts thinking that there's money in this somewhere. Same goes for folks in front of a camera or trying to flog a book. I have a certain sympathy with that whole, all right, I done said it and I still don't goddamn believe it attitude, to be frank. Doesn't matter, though. Anything can happen west of Old 100th. And it's when I hear tell of something flat contrary to what I'd expect of hereditary legends I sit up and pay attention. And, as I say, poses a problem in ethics and law. Tell you what I do believe in. I believe, because it's scientifically established, in hypertrichosis. Fact is, it's not unknown in old Mexico. I believe in drift and alleles, in bottlenecks and founder effects, in inbreeding depression and all it implies. And I'm inclined to believe in clinical lycanthropy, I mean in the psychological sense, delusions of non-humanity. Now, I'm not talking about what's being called species dysphoria in the common sense. The popular sense of that, as far as I can tell, is the notion that there might be if politicians and political attitudes evolve a pretended human right to insist you're not human. Yeah, hell, I live in a country where some plaintiff's lawyer right now is trying to convince a court that a chimp is a person for the purposes of constitutional law. Some of the federal judges I've seen, a chimp would be an improvement, put one on the bench at any rate. But you can see the problem in law and ethics with the idea of accepting the human right to pretend not to be human. As much as I'd love to see the IRS wrestle with that one, and your dog license come up in the next voter ID case, I think the law would best not go down that path. Problem is, the law is going to have to go down some path right soon. West of 100th at any rate. No, I'm not worried about suburban mall rats who pretend they think they're real werewolves. Country survived the batch a few years ago thought they were real vampires. Most of them didn't cause any real trouble. Hell, we have sheriffs. It leaves the country up past our waiters and shrinks at institutions. Anybody does cause trouble. I'm worried about some real practicalities west of 100th. Article in the local paper. I best not get the name. Call it the Rat Creek Advertiser and Bringus Times. Stock missing. The Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association has offered a reward for information. That was last November. I told you I think wolves had been eradicated west of 100th a right good time ago. But these cattle, beef masters, coyotes, including the two-legged people-smuggling ones, wouldn't stand a chance. Hell, wolves in that way on the left wouldn't stand a chance. Probably grizzlies either. Whole point of the beef master is it's being bred to stand up to every natural predator. Goddamn arcs we've created, you get right down to it. You tell me, though, what happens when a small, inbred human population, living fairly, with every man's hand against them, breeds itself on the same principle? Coyotes, the human ones, I mean. That part of the big empty, west of 100th, used to be full of them, and now smuggled people. They won't go near it now. But yes, there's forensic evidence, before you ask, of well, humans, for now, living wild. The DNA is not pretty. Congenital hypertrichosis lanuginosa in a small population, largely inbred. Homozygous loci from here to Kansas City, I'm telling you. And feral. Getting more so by the generation, and more prone, looks like, to various mental disorders, including delusional zoanthropy. Back in March, 2 children went missing. Well, it's rough country. Even a skilled adult could get himself lost, no tenure in it right easily, I grant that. But one of them was found. I won't give details. It'd be too much. And there's no reason both of us ought to have trouble sleeping for a good long time. And yes, again, I grant you the state he was found in might have had a natural and a non-human, if you like to call it so, explanation. Might. Then again, it might very well not. Don't look at me like a tree full of owls. I'm just telling you what the medical examiner concluded, and an army pathologist brought in on QT from Hood. Something had fed there, or someone. Several someones. Anyhow, the boy was found, dead. The little girl, best I suspect that she be dead as well. There are worse fates. More stock have gone missing or been found slaughtered since then. And last week, 3 girls, about 11 or so, went missing. The older brother, one of them, he was about 14, tried to stop it from happening. Most people prefer, I think, to persuade themselves, if ever they hear it, that he was delirious when he said what he said, before he died of his injuries, which I'd assumed not to tell. I think what troubles me most, and the authorities out there west of 100th, is that, from what he said, there were already young nearby. If they've started to arrest the inbreeding, if they're still clever and sane enough for that, well, hell, if it's a breeding population now. And, well, I wasn't just west of Dixie. I said folks ain't there west of 100th didn't tend to talk or complain when they could act. And country like that ain't there. Hell yes, they tend to be armed. Have to be dumb on a mud fence not to be west of 100th. Now that's just taking rabid skunks and coyotes and bad bulls going into the brush and rattlesnakes the size of your thigh around into account. There's enough evidence for me, let alone the folks living out there, to be right sure there are, well, people, more or less, out in the campo de Brasada, living wild in every sense. Well, not anyhow, the only primates who raid and do battle and wage what could only be called war. Chimps do, some of them. But I worry more about something else. The evidence strongly suggests, well, people with those sort of problems, the inbreeding, hypertrichosis, and all the rest, it's no surprise if they turn out mostly insane in addition to being made savage. And clinical lycanthropy, yes. And there is some evidence, well, they aren't organizing themselves like primates. Not anymore. Their social structures, if we can infer them from what we do know. Look you here, I don't know, I can't imagine what they think and how by now. But if primates on a raid are dangerous, it's beginning to look like whatever they do or don't consider themselves as being, whatever they conceive themselves to be, they don't organize or act like humans or other primates any longer. They seem to have chosen to create a pack and act like wolves. Well, now, as I say, folks ain't they are armed anyway. But we do wonder, those of us who know. We are not that many, for obvious reasons, but I know I take no risk telling you. And hell, anybody who wants to sleep at night will decide it's fiction. We wonder, though, as far as things go west of 100th, can the ape casts still pull the trigger? What happens if they get a weapon or two? No, I know it's not pleasant to think about. Fact is, I expect to bait any day to hear that someone, or something, has shot something, or someone. And it's a problem in ethics and in law. How far does the beast have to take over before the human no longer is? When does it stop being even self-defense as an affirmative defense? Never mind justifiable. Is it still homicide? And if the Nakona's on the other foot, or paw, how much diminished responsibility are we looking at here? Or are we at all? What rights do we afford the defendant if he or it is a defendant? Because we wouldn't put a great ape of any other species than our own on trial, let alone a wolf. When does the beast crowd out the man? As I say, it's a problem in modern practical ethics and law, with nothing paranormal abated west of 100th. Pass the port, will you?